Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Municipal courts in St. Louis County, Missouri have for years been used to terrorize and squeeze money from citizens who are accused of the most trivial crimes. Speeding, owning a garbage can which, on a non-trash day, can be seen from the street, grass which has grown too tall, or an old house not having been properly repainted. These trivial crimes can cost citizens hundreds of dollars they cannot afford in fines and court costs. Our guest today is Dan Hyatt. Mr. Hyatt has for years fought the extra legal powers of the St. Louis County Municipal Courts. Following the Ferguson riots and the subsequent examination of its root causes, Mr. Hyatt's voice has finally been heard by the legislature, the press, and the public. Today we will be discussing the serious problem of municipal courts which have been out of control for over 50 years. Dan Hyatt, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Lee.
Now, courts have been out of control in St. Louis County, I said, for 50 years. And I want you to describe to people why did I say that?
Well, back in 1966 in the Missouri Law Review, there was an article, Promulgation of the Municipal Courts, which described the problems of these small courts that were dependent upon the cities, that were corrupt, and it proposed, among other things, a centralized municipal court with full-time judges and full-time courts to bring independence to the judiciary.
Right, but that never went anywhere, did it? The idea, the proposal.
The proposal never went anywhere, even though the law professor pointed out that Missouri law requires full-time judges and an independent judiciary.
Now, you just said something interesting. You said that the law requires, and yet we're both sitting here talking about a system in which none of this has happened. So how is it possible that the law requires and we're still going on and on about municipal courts which are being run in opposition to Missouri state law?
Well, there seems to be two threads there. One is the mantra of the appeals court and the state Supreme Court when reviewing municipal practices or municipal ordinances is any ordinance which conflicts with state law is void, unenforceable, and no law at all. And the appeals court likes to say that the municipal court has no jurisdiction. Yet the next day the municipal court insists that the appeals court has no jurisdiction in their courtroom. The Supreme Court rulings don't apply.
So these judges, which they're not really judges now, are they? The ones who sit in municipal courts. Let's just back up. Somebody gets a ticket they're driving along in St. Louis somewhere. It doesn't have to be just North County. It can be anywhere in St. Louis County. They get a ticket. They wind up in front of a municipal court, whether it's Creve Coeur, whether it's Manchester, whether it's St. Anne, whether it is Ferguson, right? And in front of them is a guy who sits there and he calls himself a judge. But in fact, this fella is just some hireling, isn't he? Who's been hired by the city council to act as a judge without formal judge training.
Yes, it's ambiguous because when it's convenient for them, they claim to be state judges of the associate court, but when it's convenient for them, they claim they're not state court judges and not bound by the appeals court and the Supreme Court. In Ferguson question, as I understand, Judge Brockmeyer was an employee of the police chief under the org chart of Ferguson.
Now, just remind people who Brockmeyer was, in case they're not familiar, because this is also being seen on YouTube around the world.
Judge Brockmeyer was the corrupt judge in Ferguson, and in St. Louis, they're usually prosecutor and town judge in another. He was a prosecutor in other towns. He was a judge in Breckenridge. He was buying and selling justice. He admitted this on national TV, and he said that he's allowed to. Mm-hmm. And he created the crisis in Ferguson in part by fining people and throwing them in jail for petty non-crime offenses. And I say non-crime because the cities claim they're civil offenses, so you can't be thrown in jail. The ambiguous state role is that it's a quasi-criminal where you have criminal rights, but it's not a criminal prosecution, where you have the rights of a criminal trial, but they can't put you in jail, yet they do anyways because there's no accountability and no oversight.
Now, I understand you have some personal experience in this matter.
Describe
Describe that. Yeah, I guess that's your cue. Describe what your personal relationship was with Judge Brockmeyer.
Well, I've been a observer and a defendant in various North County municipalities. In Judge Brockmeyer's court, I attempted to present a defense because the city ordinance and the officer's claims conflict with state law, therefore the ordinance is no law at all. The judge was annoyed by that. He was annoyed when I invoked Missouri Supreme Court Rule 37. He actually jailed me for a time because I invoked Missouri Supreme Court rules, which are the rules in his courtroom. He doesn't believe they were the rules in his courtroom. Then I was threatened with a beating by 4 officers after court for declining to sign an illegal civil contract until it was reviewed by an attorney. I wasn't threatening anybody. They knew I was not armed, and 4 police officers were threatening me.
Mm-hmm. Well, just I've said this on this program before, but I'll say it again here, that I too had an experience in a different town. In this case, it was Bell Ridge, Missouri, in which I went to plead not guilty to some bogus charge. And the next thing I knew, I found myself being thrown into what laughingly they call a jail, which was like this stinking hole, and then brought out, verbally abused, and then, thrown back out on the street. So everybody knows that, that each of us actually have personal experience in dealing with these courts. It is, just to review what you said, it is a fact that all courts in the state of Missouri come under the jurisdiction of the Missouri Supreme Court. Is that correct?
And more so, Rule 37 is specific to the municipal courts. I'd also like to point out 2 other things about the municipal court. Where there's about 1 million people in St. Louis County, there were about 500,000 failure to appears. And they talked a lot about the people who weren't appearing in court. But what they weren't talking about was, in almost none of the cases were the court files following the professional requirements of the Missouri Supreme Court for the court files. They failed the minimum standards of the appeals court, and in Judge Brockmeyer's court, I pled not guilty 3 different times, and one of those times when I spoke to the judge and spoke to the prosecutor, the judge the next day issued a failure to appear because I failed to appear when I told him not guilty, and he failed to record it.
Uh-huh. Well, it has now been noted, I guess officially, that Judge Brockmeyer was not a good guy and wasn't really upholding the law, and was gotten rid of after the riots in Ferguson, right?
But he was not alone.
But he was not also held accountable for any of this behavior either, has he been?
No, he has not been held accountable.
And you just said he's not alone. Explain what you mean there.
I was in Normandy court as an observer, and the court clerk was denying me access, and I asked her under whose authority she was denying the U.S. constitutional right to a public trial. Well, they know that all the courts were denying all defendants a right to a public trial as guaranteed by the U.S. and Missouri constitutions. They were denying people a fair and speedy trial because they were revenue courts. They had no intention of giving anybody a fair break unless you were willing to subsidize the city with this illegal tax.
Mm-hmm. On that subject that you just brought up, I'm reminded of the city of St. Anne. At one time, the city of St. Anne had lots and lots of revenue because they had a very large shopping center within their district. And then as the shopping center started going downhill, their revenues began to dry up, and eventually Northwest Plaza was gone, right? And so amazingly, and I know this is true because I heard it from State Senator Eric Schmidt when he was talking, and he said that amazingly, all of a sudden the number of tickets that were being written and the amount of revenue that was being generated for the city through tickets, especially traffic tickets, had skyrocketed in order to make up for the loss of the tax revenue from Northwest Plaza.
Well, actually, there's more to it than that. The St. Anne has about a mile and a half of Interstate 70, which is the primary route from Kansas to Illinois. It's a primary route for people from Illinois into St. Louis and such.
And to the airport.
And to the international airport. And St. Anne would have 8 or 9 officers on the nice, warm, sunny days writing thousands of tickets for 71 miles an hour, which, by the way, leads a question as to whether the fraud is involved, because anybody who's familiar with a bell curve knows that out of 100 tickets, there might be 80 that are 71 and 10 that are 72 and 5 that are 73 and so on. No, they were all 71 with an occasional 83. If you're familiar with radar guns, and such like that, they're what you call a broad beam.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're pointing that at a freeway with 4 lanes of medium traffic, there is no way the officer can identify which car he is actually recording. And so there's a large question on whether the officer citing the person for speeding is fraud. And there was another less known program where they had a speed camera on a minor street, and the court provided me proof of the engineering, but I'm an engineer. And I read that and I informed the judge that if a sophomore science student or math student or engineering student provided me a test with this kind of calculations on it, they would get an F because everything was wrong. The judge found me not guilty, but I spoke to the engineer later who actually set up the system. He had no knowledge of those documents. He had not written them. He had not approved them. So somebody created evidence that the court knew was fraudulent, and they were using that to convict hundreds or thousands of people.
Mm-hmm. And of course, none of these people are going to be getting their money back from these various municipalities, even if something like that, what you just said, is proven, right?
Right.
The money's gone. So all we're talking about is trying to improve things from today forward. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's what you've been working on of late, isn't it? To improve things from today on.
Yes.
And what are the things that you have been working on diligently?
Well, there was once a sales expert who coined the term win-win. And I'm convinced that if we can get the state to provide accountability and oversight to the municipalities, and we would then become an attraction to large companies. I would love to convince Amazon to come in at the end of the airport. Maybe they don't pay $20 an hour, but we have 40% unemployment in black youth in North County. If we can give those black youths and the blacks jobs at Amazon for $10 an hour, they now have a paycheck. They're now subsidizing small businesses, which creates a middle class in North County, which improves the tax base for North County, it improves the home values, and it improves everybody's quality of life, and will probably negatively affect crime.
Yeah, people don't understand that when people have money in their pocket and they go to their local restaurant or they go to a little shop or something and they put money down, that money that they put down helps to hire other people to work at the restaurant or to work in that shop, and that this money multiplies all around the town where the money is being spent.
At WashU, a University of Chicago professor on gun crime pointed out that the most effective method of reducing gun crime and pulling the at-risk youth from gun crime is to actually give them menial jobs, not even full-time jobs, just a job. And it has a dramatic effect and pulls them away from the brink. And so actually bringing in large companies that provide minimal level jobs will have what we can expect a large impact on crime and violence in North County.
And it's your contention that these businesses that you would like to see relocate into St. Louis County aren't because of the environment the legal and political environment in St. Louis County?
Somebody explained to me the reason why Chicago is so successful and St. Louis was left by the wayside when St. Louis is the middle of the United States. It has the rails, it has the river, we have the airport, is because in Chicago you went to a mobster and he cleared the way for you to do business. In St. Louis, you had to deal with yet another municipality every time you went a mile down the road. Mm-hmm. And that discouraged business from coming here, though we do have a lot of world headquarters in Central and West County.
I think just before we went on the air, you were telling me something about the town of Edmonton. And that's right near the airport, and they have some car rental agencies there. Why don't you repeat what you said?
Edmonton is a town that is so small, it is smaller than most homeowners associations. They have their own city hall, their own public works, their own police department. In order to fund this city, because they're losing the traffic revenue, they picked the November non-general election to put a new tax on the ballot. The tax is a car rental agency had come in and put in a new, large, beautiful car rental facility across the street from the airport. Edmonton passed a tax. They're, 1,000, 2,000 people? They're charging a $75 tax for every rental car that hits that lot each year. So you literally have a town where 150 people voted for this tax over hundreds and hundreds of rental cars in a company attempting to do business in their town, bringing jobs and economy, and the city saying, we don't want you here, we're going to tax you to death.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where people understand that there are out-of-control courts and there's out-of-control town councils. What are we going to do about it? What have you talk to people, you're working on things. Explain to people, ideally, what do you think is needed?
Well, one of my concerns is a city of 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, even 5,000 can't afford a professional engineer. Missouri law requires a professional engineer to do the work of a professional engineer, or where health and safety is important. So that would be roads, that would be anything with public
Water.
Works, that would be building inspecting, yet you have building inspectors who are qualified to say, hey, the house needs painting, but they will admit they are not experts in electrical or plumbing or such like that. And there's no professional engineer providing them guidance and oversight. Mm-hmm. Missouri law says it's a Class A misdemeanor to do the work of a professional engineer without a professional engineering license. Mm-hmm. Some of the other items I would do, the municipalities generally do not have the ability to make laws on their own. They can only make laws with permission from the state, or if they're a charter city, they may make a law with permission from the state, or if the state has made no such law. And we need the state to step in, provide close oversight and accountability. One possibility is providing automatic damages and attorney's fees when these cities knowingly and willfully pass laws that conflict with state law. They know they're void, they know they're unenforceable, and they don't care because nobody's going to make them follow the law.
Well, where's the county prosecutor? Where's the attorney general of the state of Missouri in all of this? Isn't that supposed to be part of their mandate?
The term is the culture. The culture of St. Louis is, even though the Missouri Constitution says that the people are the source of all political power, and there are two kinds of government in Missouri, there is government of good, and there's government that fails its chief design. And the Constitution gives 6 rights of the people that those cities are obligated to protect to qualify them. But the county and the state politicians and bureaucrats tend to want to protect the municipalities no matter how outrageous the municipal conduct is. For instance, the county prosecutor allowed Pine Lawn to do whatever they wanted. The feds had to come in and arrest the mayor. The feds constantly have to come in and deal with the corruption. The assistant police chief had police officers following him and his girlfriend's home and following the girlfriend's home so that they would not get DUIs while driving while intoxicated. There's numerous examples of corruption in St. Louis that the prosecutor isn't concerned with. The state attorney general seems unconcerned with.
So the prosecutor we're referring to is Robert McCulloch?
Robert McCulloch.
McCulloch, yeah, he became nationally known during the Michael Brown case.
Yes.
Yes. And the attorney general is Koster.
Correct.
I forget his first name.
Chris Koster.
Chris Koster, who is, he's been the attorney general now for, 7 years, something like that.
Yes.
And have you had contact with either of these organizations so that you know personally what you're saying is true, or you've only just heard through the grapevine that these things are true?
When I was challenging the municipal courts and trying to get traction, I'm asking the attorneys why. And they keep telling me it's the culture, and they told me, don't buck the culture, it's dangerous. This was before Michael Brown. It was 2 months before Michael Brown when Judge Brockmeyer threw me in jail for citing Missouri Supreme Court rules in his courtroom because he's not bound by the Missouri Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And he's not alone. Last night I had a judge inform me I'm a liar, that these judges do not declare that the U.S. and Missouri Constitution is not valid in their courtroom. Yet I've heard it from the judges when I cite the Constitution or I cite the rules. Appeals court rulings, Supreme Court rulings, they say that's not valid in this courtroom. And they say the only thing that's valid in this court are the ordinances of this municipality. When they say that in response to a constitutional challenge, I would say that they are claiming the Constitution has no validity in their courtroom.
Mm-hmm. But have you heard from either Mr. McCulloch or his office or Mr. Koster in his office that they're not enforcing or not intending to enforce, or that they don't believe that enforcement is required?
I've not contacted their offices.
Okay. So we were just talking about them, and it seems that way, but you don't know that for a fact.
Right.
Right.
Speaking to McCulloch, it's really two sides. His father was, I understand, a police officer who was killed in the line of duty. You can understand his backing of the police. You can understand his backing of government because of the family history there. On the flip side is we need somebody, and it was supposed to be the circuit court judge who was overseeing the municipal courts, and she says she doesn't oversee them. She can't possibly oversee them. Mm-hmm. And so there is no oversight and accountability. The other problem with municipal courts is they don't record their proceedings, so you can't challenge the judge's behavior because no record exists. So
there's no transcript, there's no audio recordings, video recordings of these proceedings.
I propose that they be required to have audio video recordings of all court proceedings to allow defendants to challenge the judge's conduct later. That way, when the other judges see that this conduct is not allowed by the appeals court, they're more likely to follow the law. I don't think they're bad people. I think it's just the judge in this court did this, so the judge in this court does that, and pretty soon they're all doing that. Nobody ever gets in trouble, so then somebody tries this. Pretty soon everybody's doing that. The same thing is happening in the municipalities. That's why oversight and accountability is so important.
Mm-hmm. Here in the last 3-4 minutes, I want to make sure that you have said everything that you wanted, or make any proposals that you think that the public needs to hear about correcting some of these municipal court problems.
I would propose a state ombudsman, or for the municipal courts, I would propose what's called a appeal by mail, where you write the appeals court a letter or a form and you explain what conduct you think or what ruling by the judge is in conflict with state law and the court rulings, And the appeals court has a single appeals court judge or a appointed circuit court judge review that appeal and rule on it without going through the formal process, without going through great expense, because Missouri Supreme Court rules does say the fastest, most expedient dispensing of justice with low cost.
What would you think about actually dissolving all of these municipal courts and taking all these cases and moving it into the Associate Circuit Court, where there are actually judges who are trained and follow a process which is under the Missouri Supreme Court?
Well, actually, currently there's 4 county municipal courts, and I would propose having full-time judges in those 4 courts, and the defendant being able to choose which court he wants to go into, in most cases going in anytime before his court date for his arraignment, and slowly move from part-time judges to full-time judges, having court Monday through Friday normal times, and then extend it to 8 o'clock at night, have court on Saturday, so that people can show up to work regardless of their work schedule, babysitting schedule, and such like that.
And you think that that would work?
I know it would work.
Is it going to be a great expense to the taxpayers?
It should be a dramatic reduction in cost to the taxpayers. The defendants would pay court costs when convicted and only when convicted, and that pays for the judges and the court clerks, but it would be, and I disagree with Better Together on many points, but it would be a great efficiency, and it would create an independent judiciary. The judiciary are not supposed to be the tax collectors for the municipalities.
Yeah, as I said at the very beginning, these, quote, judges and these prosecutors are actually hired by city councils to go out and be cash registers for their town.
Absolutely, that's well established.
And there is, here in the last 30 seconds, do you have anything that you want to add?
St. Louis is a wonderful town. It has great opportunity and great potential. And I'd like to see the citizens of St. Louis be treated as citizens in Missouri, protected by the government, not targeted by the government.
Yeah, very well put. Because nobody wants to. I mean, if you've done something and you know you've done it, okay, fine, I'll pay. But when you haven't done this thing, or it is so trivial and they're sticking you with this huge amount of fine, and it's just wrong. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lee.
Dan Hyatt, well, he's been very interested in this subject of St. Louis County Municipal Courts for quite a long time. And finally, after all these years of his interest and his own personal experiences, he's actually having some impact. You've heard what he had to say. We're going to be uploading this to YouTube. You can show it to other people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.